You know, I think it's safe to say that the MCU has hit a rough patch. A string of box office disappointments, unpopular Disney Plus shows, disconnected storylines, forgettable characters, off-screen controversies, and a growing disinterest in superhero films have all taken a toll on the brand in recent years. So much so that even massive hits like No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine have only been temporary successes, failing to carry their momentum into other projects. So now the MCU needs a really good gimmick. You know, kind of like those inflated guys that you see at car dealerships. Something to really get the people's attention and get them back in the theater. And what better way to do that than with the brand new Avengers film, Avengers Doomsday. A movie which hopes to achieve the same cameo-driven nostalgia slop success of Deadpool and Wolverine by bringing back everyone. And by everyone, I mean... Have you been wanting more Shang-Chi? Well, that's good, because he's coming back. Have you been patiently waiting for the return of Namor? Well, I hope so, because he's here too.
Yay!
Of course, not every name attached to the movie is bad. In fact, there were a few surprises added to the cast list. Chris Hemsworth is coming back as Thor, which was really unexpected, considering how much he hated Love and Thunder, and even Patrick Stewart is returning as Professor X. I'm assuming so that we can watch him die on screen for the 5th time. In fact, it seems like most of the Fox-era X-Men are making an appearance, which seems impossible considering that, according to Deadpool and Wolverine, they're all dead, but whatever, that's just the power of the multiverse, I guess. However, the most surprising return in all this is Robert Downey Jr., who apparently was offered more money than the GDP of Europe to return to the franchise, despite the fact that he's won an Oscar since his MCU departure and made it clear that he had no plans to return.
If I pick the jersey back up and put it on, wouldn't you feel a little bit like, oh,
No.
crap?
Now, is this selling out? Possibly. However, if I had trucks dumping piles of money onto my lawn, I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing. Jokes aside, my only real concern with Avengers Doomsday, which will be followed shortly by Avengers Secret War, is that a movie of this magnitude needs to be earned. It shouldn't be hastily put together in a desperate attempt to make audiences do this. You see, Avengers films used to mean something. They were the payoff of years of world building, character development, and storytelling. But since Endgame, there's not really been any build-up. Hardly any of the movies feel connected, and Marvel has resorted to dangling keys in front of audiences, relying on nostalgia to grab attention, rather than creating anything of substance. The only thing is, no one really cares about this anymore. Sure, there are some sycophants who will scream and cheer at the very mention of Marvel,
Yeah! Dork!
but general audiences don't seem to have much interest. And that's because we've hit the tipping point of superhero fatigue, a phenomenon that is a very real thing, no matter how many people try to tell you it's not. I mean, really, it's just a classic case of oversaturation. The MCU used to be new and exciting, and it made a lot of money. Eventually, the rise in the superhero genre caused the MCU to have to compete with other superhero movies, not only with other studios, but with themselves. This oversupply of films meant they had to make movies that were bigger, more expensive, and produced a lot faster in order to keep up with audience expectations, which in turn caused quality to decline and consumer perception of the brand suffered. What were once must-see theatrical events are now films that can be watched at home on a streaming service, and audiences are craving something else. What that is remains unclear, but it's obvious it's not the MCU. The only way that I can see the MCU recovering is by scaling back their output and focusing on quality over quantity. And from what I gather, that is the goal of Doomsday and Secret War, a reboot of the MCU to get things back on track. However, it may be too little too late. As we've seen throughout the history of film, some genres never fully recover, and it looks like the MCU might be on its way to joining the ranks of westerns and 80s style action movies. The glory days are over, and audiences are ready for something else.